Hello everyone, welcome to episode 25 of JustDario Cigar Time. Today's big question is, how can the US win a tariff war without allies? Tariffs are everywhere right now. Social media, mainstream news, it's all anyone's talking about. Suddenly, everybody's a trade negotiation guru, spouting off opinions like they've got a PhD in game theory or commercial tactics. But let's keep it real. Most of these folks don't know what they're talking about. The problem, this tidal wave of misinformation is screwing with people trying to make real decisions about their investments, their businesses, you name it. It's getting out of hand, and it's messing with folks who just want to figure out what's next. Now, let me clear something up. Tariffs aren't a war with tanks, planes, or bombs. But don't get it twisted. It's still a war, an economic war. And here's the thing. It's damn hard to win any war without allies. Are we all on the same page here? It is especially hard to win a war without allies when you're picking up a fight like against the entire world. The past few days, it's been painfully obvious how desperate the US administration is to make this tariff mess sound like a win. They're out there saying, oh, we're about to sign huge commercial deals. Everything is going great. We are negotiating with 200 countries at once. Small problem, there are only 195 countries in the world. That's a minor detail, right? They're hyping up progress, but the rest of the world, that's silent. Europe, not a pip. India, supposedly close to a deal, not that much. The Middle East, China, even Japan, they're not exactly jumping to back up the US narrative. This disconnect is glaring. The US is pushing this narrative of strength, like they've got everything under control. But the reality, they're isolating themselves, not just from the world, but from their allies. It's getting dicey, and there is no clearer sign of that than what just went down with Japan. Let's talk about Japan for a few minutes, because what just happened this week literally blew my mind. If you know anything about Japanese culture, you know they don't do public drama. They're all about keeping things polite, reserved, harmonious. So, when the Japanese finance minister, Mr. Kato, steps up and publicly calls out the US, it's a 5-alarm fire. He straight up said, hey, US, you think you hold all the cards? Think again. We are number one foreign holder of US treasuries. If you don't start negotiating in good faith and find a compromise that works for both of us, those treasuries might just become part of the tariffs talks. When I saw the headlines about this, my jaw hit the floor. This is a huge deal for a bunch of reasons. First off, Japan's supposed to be the US's closest economic ally. If your best buddy is willing to pull a move like that and publicly demand you drop the new tariffs slapped on them on April the 2nd, it's a screaming red flag that these negotiations are going nowhere fast. And if Japan's saying this out loud, what do you think other countries are saying behind closed doors? I bet big the chances are sky high that others are dropping similar threats. Here is where the US screwed up big time. They thought they could sit down with each country one-on-one, flex their economic muscle, and steamroll everyone. Divide and conquer, right? Except they forgot one tiny detail. The rest of the world isn't playing that game. Countries are clearly coordinating, teaming up to counterbalance the US's weight. And they've got a killer trump card, US debt. See, almost all US allies, except China in terms of being an ally, hold a ton of US treasuries. They are starting to remind the US that their economies keep the dollar flowing, which finances America's massive government deficit. Without those allies buying treasuries, the whole system starts to shake. Now, I don't think allies are gonna dump their treasuries in a fire sale. That will hurt them as much as it will hurt the US. But what about just stopping new purchases That's enough to create a world of trouble for the US. The US would have to look inward to find domestic resources to fill that gap to finance the growth of its debt. And good luck with that when the economy is already running on empty. Raising taxes? Nobody is touching that with a 10-foot pole. Don't even mention it around the administration, of course. They will lose it. Raising tariffs even more or cracking down harder? Sure, but let's be clear. Tariffs aren't paid by foreign countries. They are paid by the consumer. That means higher prices, inflation basically. And here is the brutal truth. Inflating your way out of debt only works when the economy is strong. Right now, the US is a debt-driven economy that would tumble into a nasty recession without government spending holding it up. So, when allies start waving the US Treasury's card at the negotiating table, it's a really bad sign. Here is what I find nuts. The markets are acting like none of this is happening. On Friday, the S&P 500 closed positive for the 9th day in a row. The FTSE 100 in UK, 15 straight green days. These numbers don't add up when you look at the mess we are in. There has been zero improvement in the tariff situation. What has changed is the spin. More positive news, less panic, lower volatility. Everybody's feeling bullish, jumping back in, but the institutional money? So far, they're not being fooled that much. Asset managers are sitting on the highest cash piles they've had in the past few years, after liquidating during the recent turmoil. They didn't plow that money back into stocks, which tells you they know this rally is built on quicksand. The lies, narratives, are especially thick when it comes to US-China talks. Every single day, the US is out there saying, China is reaching out, they're desperate for a deal, their economy is collapsing. That's complete BS. Come on. China has been crystal clear from the beginning. Drop the tariffs, then we'll sit down. They are not coming to the table under economic threats. And they have said that since day one. The US's stubborn spin is getting more ridiculous by the minute, but the markets are still eating it up. For now, clock's ticking though. Oh, and don't forget, there is a 90-day tariff postponement in place for most countries. Everyone except China, of course. But 30 days are already gone, so we've got 60 left. When you have got Japan saying things like, drop the tariffs or no deal, you know the two sides are about as far apart as you can get. And to anyone thinking that trade deal with India is gonna swoop in and save the US out of its mess, let's have a reality check here. Many folks are banking on India to pull the US out of their tariffs mess. Let's ask a few basic questions though. How fast can India scale up its supply chain to even dream of competing with China? What natural resources does India have to produce goods locally? What about industrial IP? Can India match China or other Asian nations? And how's India supposed to fill the massive production void left by China towards the US market? Take Apple, for example. They've just dropped some pretty weak earnings. They're like, oh, we beat expectations. Revenues grew 5% year over year. Yeah. Well, yeah, except that growth barely keeping up with inflation. In real terms, Apple's revenues are shrinking. But hey, they announced another 100 billion stock buyback. So Wall Street is like, woohoo! Meanwhile, Tim Cook's out there saying they're moving production to India, especially for goods meant to the US market to buffer the impact of tariffs. Sounds awesome, right? Except he forgot to mention one little detail. They're just assembling iPhones in India. The components, they will still be coming from China. But China is not about to let its local suppliers pack up their factories and industrial know-how and move to India. In fact, they have already blocked attempts to shift production equipment abroad. Is that fair? I'm not here to judge, but let's not be shocked. The US and Europe have been doing the same thing for years, with tight export control on tech and machinery. China's early industrial boom happened on the back of outdated, many times donated tech. Nothing cutting edge. They had to build their own industrial IP. And now it is stronger than a lot of Western nations who have been instead chasing financializations, services, and public debt. This brings me to a bigger point. An economy built on financialization, services, and debt isn't creating real value. It's all smoke and mirrors. The US forgot the importance of domestic industrial production, and now they're paying the price. Nominal growth looks nice on paper, but it's fooled by monetary inflation that's eroding the real worth of the economy. People feel it. Even folks making good money are watching their quality of life slip away. Wealth inequalities is absurd, and too many people can't even get by anymore. The hyper-financialized system is at the root of it all. So, this idea that a trade deal with India is gonna turn things around quickly, it's total fantasy. Countries are starting to realize they can drag their feet, push back, and get the US to drop tariffs. The US is the one risking economic isolation here, and it's self-inflicted. Some nations are even looking at ways to wean themselves off the dependence of the US consumers. That's a huge shift, and it's risky. Even the threat of military action. Yeah, the US still has the best military, on paper, I believe, won't carry the same weight when other countries, especially like China, have a far stronger military complex compared to years ago, when the US was the undisputed world's sheriff. Escalating to that level would be a disaster, and I don't think we'll see it. But it shows how few good cards the US has left to play. And the problem of US are not just abroad. The US administration is losing allies, support at home too. Big retailers and consumer goods distributors like Walmart, Costco, and others are freaking out. Amazon's results were rough. Free cash flow dropped 50% year over year. Jeff Bezos just filed to sell another $5 billion in stock. And this even before tariffs started to bite. Do you think all I'm saying is just a coincidence? No. Do you think Jeff Bezos just got a sixth sense for timing market tops? Of course not. Other insiders like Mark Zuckerberg are selling too. Just connect the dots, people. Companies are begging the administration for tariff exemptions left and right, saying they can take the hit, saying the economic can take the hit. But the administration is not budging. It's isolating itself even from its own business community. Overall, we are speeding towards the end of that 90-day postponement. July is coming fast. If there is no real progress in these talks soon, it's going to get ugly. We'll start seeing headlines about supply chain shortages, price spikes, and economic pain. The US is increasingly alone. The India's card is a bust, and domestic support is crumbling. Public approval for the administration is tanking. No surprise here, okay? The plan was to endure short-term pain for long-term gain. But right now, it's just pain with no gain in sight. And the situation is getting worse. It's getting problematic. So where does that leave us? Be careful out there. Keep your critical thinking hat on. And don't fall for the bullish narratives being spun to prop up markets. These folks don't have your best interest at all. You've got to look out for yourself. Position your investments smartly and don't underestimate the chance of things going sideways. Overestimating the positive and ignoring the negative is how you end up with serious losses. Thanks for hanging with me, folks. I appreciate you liking, commenting, and subscribing on my YouTube channel, following and supporting me on X, and reading and commenting on my articles on JustDario.com. Your support really keeps helping me in digging into these topics and improve the research I can deliver to you. Have an awesome weekend and talk soon.